Greetings and welcome, one and all, to the Suspicious Scribe, where rhyme and reason are our greatest tools. I am Scribe, and for today we'll be looking at a fan fiction piece that is, well, personally, a favorite of mine. Now, keep in mind, I don't do the typical fan fiction reviews. I'm not going to read giant chapters or walls of text, and I'm certainly going to stay away from the, less quality works out there. You know exactly the ones I'm talking about. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. This is Soulbound by xT-Zealot. Link below. That we're talking about. Soulbound is based in the world of a web series called RWBY, produced by Rooster Teeth. Link down below. Now, RWBY is by far one of my favorite shows ever, for a number of reasons. The characters are extremely well done, the world is incredibly creative, and the fight scenes, some of the best that you will ever find. So, naturally, it makes sense that during the waits between the seasons and the episodes, I'd browse fanfiction just a little bit. Now, Soulbound I came across during the break between Season 2 and 3. Within the first chapter, I was blown away. Soulbound is an in-depth retelling of a very familiar story. It takes the entirety of Season 1 and just builds onto it. Scenes and stories that must have happened or should have happened, and yet the original never actually showed. Explanations and world building that made so much sense, giving you a whole new perspective on the series as a whole. But perhaps best of all, the story is told through the eyes of two of the main four characters. Now, this isn't exactly uncommon in fan fiction. Seeing a perspective change or just seeing a whole non-perspective story told from one character, but it really makes an extreme difference in this story, just because of the choice in the characters. Now, we'll get to that in a minute. For now, let's talk about the story as a whole. Now, for those of you who don't watch RWBY, let me summarize the first season as pertains to both Soulbound and the main cast. Now, in the world that it takes place in, Remnant, there are these creatures called Grimm, monsters that exist everywhere and constantly try to tear down the meager footholds humanity has managed to create. Now, these footholds, called the Four Kingdoms, each have a special school where huntresses and huntsmen, the warriors, train to fight the monsters known as Grimm. This story tells of Team RWBY, a group of 4 huntresses in training as they go through their school year, learning and getting ready to fight. It accumulates when one character, Blake, lets out a secret that frankly we all kind of saw coming, and eventually confronts a group from her past involved with that secret. Now, it's simple, it's lighthearted, and very open for different advancements with the plot and the world building for the next season. Now, Soulbound takes that and stretches it, fills it, and gives us so much more. It's from the perspective of the reserved and mysterious Blake Belladonna, who I mentioned earlier, and the heiress known as Weiss Schnee. Now, by giving us defined perspectives and points of view, the story can take an incredibly different tone than when it did in the show. For example, in the second chapter of Soulbound, the team RWBY is setting up their dorm room and getting ready for their upcoming school year. Now, in the show, it was a very lighthearted, short scene, only a few minutes long, and didn't really pertain much to the plot except to establish they have a dorm room. But while the show only took a few minutes, Soulbound, we specifically get Blake's perspective on this. Now, the girl has had a very hard, secretive past, and views the whole event as something completely foreign. She's hesitant to allow herself anything akin to friendship or trust or anything with interactions, and yet we see her slowly becoming more comfortable with all of this. She interacts with her teammates, laughs, and she finds some level of connection with them that she didn't really plan on getting in the first place. This thing turns an otherwise funny throwaway scene into a borderline character study. And it isn't just the original scenes that are in-depth. xT-Zealot has also expanded the story a great deal, adding scenes and portions that, frankly, I will not hesitate to say almost brought me to tears at some points. One of them occurred in the scene I just mentioned as a flashback of Weishni. She thinks back to how she convinced her father to allow her to go to the Hunter School in the first place. It gives us a look at her tense and distant relationship with her wealthy father, her motivations for the near obsession of perfection and pride. It shows us a human side we didn't really get to see with her in the original series, at least not for quite a while. It's pretty insightful and completely original. But one scene that did stick out to me in particular was one of Blake. Now, in the original show, at this point in the timeline, during the episode that it occurred, we saw Blake for a total of maybe 10 seconds. She didn't even have any lines. But here, in this interpretation, we watch her go through a huge experience. Her surroundings that she's in currently bring back a lot of deep-seated, very painful memories of a time when she had literally felt her soul rip into pieces. Her experience made her panic, gasp for breath, desperately trying to block out the memories of what had occurred. It was a PTSD flashback, for lack of a better word, and I don't even think that's too inaccurate. We've never seen this sort of emotional response from Blake ever. Not in the original series, and almost never in this story, aside from one flashback, and that was of the actual experience. Now, I don't want to say that I like characters suffering. I don't. I don't want suffering. But there's something so satisfying at seeing them in this kind of pain, knowing that eventually they're going to get back up, even stronger, overcome it. There's a lot of that in this story. A lot of suffering that you know is going to hurt them so much, but you realize that there's going to be so much more payoff because of it. Now, there aren't too many alterations to the original story, except closer towards the end, and most of the changes in the middle are more assumptions and expansion of the original universe. For example, one of the driving aspects is the concept of huntsmen bonding their souls so they can fight the creatures of Grimm at a better level. But as you can guess, something that bonds two people's souls is not something you can just do on a whim and end as you like. No, it takes a lot of commitment, emotional compatibility, and a lot more trust than you probably have in anyone else. But a major plot device is that Blake had bonded with someone in the past, and due to a lot of backstory stuff and trauma, she split it, ripped her soul in pieces, and thus is a little apprehensive about making another bond with anyone in the future. She even becomes close enough with her huntress partner Yang to attempt it at one point, but the whole thing just opened up way too many wounds, and she returned to her frightened and reserved, serious mentality. The whole concept would fit perfectly within the original world of RWBY, and adds a huge, powerful plot device. Now, I'm not going to spoil any endings, I'm not going to give you too much information, but if you have seen the original show, I'm not going to lie, there are a few differences in the ending. Not the overall effect, but definitely the feelings. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, and it just... I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to tell you more than that. So, go watch the show, go read the story, learn as much as you can. Trust me, you'll enjoy it. Now, what do I think of Soulbound? In all honesty, it's what made me fall in love with the original series all over again. This story gives the readers a whole new outlook on the characters and story that we thought we knew all too well. It makes us see the vulnerable and human-sided characters we already adored. It pulls on so many heartstrings and provokes so many thoughts, so much analysis that after reading the story, you're not going to think of the fandom ever, you're not going to think of it the same way again. So, I really do recommend that you check out this story. Link in the description, and once you're done with that, go ahead and check out some of xT-Zealot's other stories. He's got a sequel for Soulbound already, and a slew of other RWBY works with the same world or alternate ones. Not to mention a countless others. Now, read his stories, give him some love, give him some reviews. We thrive on that stuff, we writers. Now, for those of you who haven't seen the show RWBY, again, link down below for Rooster Teeth. They make a lot of great animations, a lot of great shows in general, and RWBY is one of their best work. Now, for my fellow fans, there's a link down to an abridged series below that hopefully will get you through the hiatus. It is by far one of the greatest abridged series I've seen today. Certainly the best RWBY one. Well, that's my take. Tune in next week, where I'll be returning to Scribe's archive. Hope you enjoyed, and hope you'll check out Soulbound. This is the Suspicious Scribe. Well, that's my take anyway. Tune in next week, where I'll be returning to Scribe's archive to read you a story about a man named Jack. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll be checking out Soulbound. This is the Suspicious Scribe, telling you, never let the ink dry.